last week on my Private Investigator podcast. It was episode number 11. I used a phrase just in passing, didn't think too much about it, but it has gotten more attention than what I really would have expected. So I'm here this week to kind of talk about that and clarify it a little bit. The phrase I used, and I think I used it in a question form, but are you being held hostage by your database provider? Hi, this is Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com. I'm the creator of the Investigator's Ultimate Guide series, which is premium private investigator training from someone who's been there and done that. So the phrase, the question, are you being held hostage by your database provider? What I mean by that is what happens if you lose them? That's a single point of failure in your business. If that happens, you can almost fold up shop if you're not prepared for it. There's not a lot of single points of failure in your business. If you think about if you lose internet for some reason, right? Well, you have options there. You can work at least temporarily off your phone. Maybe you can set your phone up as a hotspot. Worst comes to worst, you can drag yourself to a coffee shop and use their Wi-Fi. Take the proper precautions to make sure that everything is confidential. But the Wi-Fi failure is not, or internet failure is not a single point of failure for your company. Even if your provider, your broadband provider, cuts you off, fails, has a catastrophe, a cyber attack, whatever it is, there are other broadband providers you can go to. So it's not a single point of failure. Other things might be your telephone. You pretty much need a telephone to be a private investigator. If your phone fails, if it drops in a lake, if it gets a subscription canceled, if it gets hacked, whatever it is, you can get another phone. Heck, you can get a burner phone to get by temporarily if you need to. Even if your service provider, the phone company, cuts you off for one reason or another, there are other phone companies. You can get a cellular phone back up and running. So it's not a single point of failure. Think in terms of insurance, the same thing. There are multiple insurance companies out there for you. Now, database providers are a little bit different because there's not a lot of ones that you want as your top one or two, right? If you're like most investigators, you have more than one database provider, one provider who you can run a social security number through or license plate information or whatever it might be. But there's one that is your vast preference. It's the one you like. And your number two may not have all the exact things it has, but it maybe has some different things. So that was my experience for the 9 years I owned and ran my own detective agency. I had to have different providers because one might have more regional information about where I actually am. One would be a really good national one. But nonetheless, think about your absolute top favorite go-to, maybe even everyday database provider. What if you lost that? What would you lose? Would you lose address histories? Probably. Would you lose other people at those residences? Yes. Vehicle information? Probably gone. I mean, some of that is standard, and you could try to switch to another provider. Here's the catch. Here's the problem. If you're not already with them and you're filling out an application, they're probably going to want to know what other services you have or have had, and maybe say in the last year. If you fail to talk about the one that you lost, for whatever reason you lost it, that may disqualify you. If they find that in the future, they may cut you out too. So it's a real big deal if you rely on those databases and you lose them. What's the solution? Well, it should be no surprise to you that, in my view, public records are the solution. As I like to say, public records are the people's records. Those are the records that you should be able to get access to. You need to be able to go and fetch whatever records you need. Know your resources and know your things. Now, the database providers, most of what they provide you, I'll give you credit header data is not going to be public record. And the motor vehicle records that you run are not going to be public record. But also think about a typical report you run with one of those companies. So you punch in somebody's name or social or however, whatever criteria you're searching by, and you get back 10, 12, 18 pages of information. Now, if you're skip tracing, that's quite wonderful. But most of those pages are not helpful to you. So for example, you get maybe all the previous addresses that person has listed, even if it's 10 years old, and you get all the vehicles ever registered to that address. Again, you got 2 or 3 pages of vehicles and people that have nothing to do with your case. Now, if you're at rock bottom or you're skip tracing, that can be really, really valuable because you find an old roommate. You find the guy, you're like, wait a minute, that was the best man at his wedding. I'll bet he still knows where my skip is. You find where the guy moved back in with his parents, and now you have a lead on them, that type of thing. But most of the time, that vehicle, massive quantity of vehicle information is not super helpful to you. So you're really losing then, again, your credit header data, which is a lot of that's address history, which you can reconstruct from public records as well. So knowing how to go down to the lower court, municipal court, traffic court, sometimes those are the same, they usually are, but sometimes traffic is pulled out separate. But looking at the index, you can find a lot of times a pretty decent address history on the person. If you look at other public records that are out there, maybe a divorce record, marriage certificates, those types of things, there's a lot of information there that's going to help you out that you would normally find in those big database providers. Now, it's really nice that they just scarf them up real and present them to you. You have this pages and pages, and you can just flip to address history. You can just flip to relatives or whatever it is, vehicle history. But the reality is you can put that together yourself, and now you're not being held hostage by that database provider. Yeah, it would be a shame to lose them, but you're still in business. You can still do investigations. You can still take cases. It should come as no surprise to you when I'm this passionate about something like this. I do provide a solution out there. I do have my public records mini course that's available. If you look over at shadowanyone.com, you can find it over there and learn more about it. See if it's something that's a right fit for you. The other reason it's so important to be able to do this with the public records is your database providers are giving you just surface information. You can find out, was your subject, yes, your subject was divorced back in 2008 or whatever it is. Yeah, that's okay. Now you know there's something there. That's way different than going down to the courthouse and pulling that divorce file, which might be as thick as a phone book. That's not uncommon. If there was children in play with the divorce, which your database provider may or may not be able to tell you, probably won't. If there are children in play, the child custody issues go on until that kid hits 18, at least. And if there's back child pay due, there may be some more stuff after that. The volume and depth of information that you will find there, including budgets, work history, when the person changed a job, when they were hired, when they left a job, all that kind of stuff is there. Don't miss it. If you want to learn more about public records, how to access them, what you can get access to, what's there, then please do check out my public records course over at shadowanyone.com. In the meantime, this is Larry Kaye with shadowanyone.com. Remember, do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.